But with no further ado here, I look forward to introducing Linda Elkins and Alison Powers here. Linda, let's start with you. How are you, first of all? Where are you? And tell us a little bit about Gore, WL Gore, for people that don't know about it.
Sure. Hello. Thanks for having me here. It's great to join. So I am currently in Redwood City, California. And so I work at WL Gore. We are best known for the brand name Gore-Tex, if you haven't made the connection. But we are an advanced materials company focused on everything from our Gore-Tex line to medical products, cardiovascular implants, to industrial and electronic applications, from venting to filtration. And then we have a growth industry looking at primarily sustainability as well as other life science applications. So doing well and excited to be here.
That's great. And Linda, tell us a little bit about your kind of your remit there and your day job and what you're doing at Gore.
Sure. So I head our innovation center here in Silicon Valley. Gore, about 5 years ago, in our future-looking strategy, Gore wanted to reinvigorate innovation, and that's really external innovation. We're known as being a very innovative company internally. And one of the actions we took in terms of reinvigorating this external innovation was to create our innovation center. So we have a 11,000 square foot space out here. We have about a 2,500 prototyping lab where we host startups, looking for partnerships with startups, working with them together, accelerating their technology with our expertise, our materials, our distribution, and then also look at various other forms of partnerships and getting folks and working together out here as much as we can. So we're a corporate function looking across all our businesses and as well as our growth engine.
That's great. And we look forward to diving in about the Innovation Center. I've been there, and when we're all allowed when we're released into the wild, I encourage all of you to visit the Innovation Center out there. Alison, thanks again for joining us, and tell us a little bit about you and your role. How are you doing? And there may be a lot of people out there, or at least some who don't know a lot about thyssenkrupp and also the elevator division. So if you could share that a little bit with us as well.
Yeah, hey everybody, nice to meet you. I'm Alison Powers, and I lead the research. Currently, right now, I lead the Research and Innovation Center for thyssenkrupp Elevator. Kind of transitioning into a new role here shortly as we bring innovation up. If you're familiar with Atlanta, we're bringing it up the road as we consolidate our North America business in Atlanta. We're building a 420-foot elevator test tower in Atlanta. So that's going to be kind of the staple of the Atlanta, Marietta, if you're familiar with the area. It's a suburb about, 15 minutes away from downtown Atlanta. But we'll kind of be a figurehead there in the skyline, and that's really exciting. It's happening right now in our business. So that test facility is going to be done next year, and we'll be bringing kind of innovation up there with us. So we currently sit in Midtown Atlanta in the Research and Innovation Center kind of space ecosystem here, but we're moving up there as the entire North America business, like I just said, kind of consolidates into Atlanta. So a lot of change happening right now for our business, but it's good, exciting change. Where I sit is in the research and innovation space, but again, in my new role, I'll be also responsible for this new innovation and test tower. So testing and qualifying our product for safe, for elevators being safe for the riders, code compliance, things like that. So what I do today currently is interesting. It's living, breathing innovation right now. And I think Drew will prompt me to talk a little bit more about this, but you can think like, it must be an interesting time for an elevator company right now as people return to work and don't want to touch anything, including elevator buttons. So it's kind of reprioritized some projects that we have in our business right now. So we're really good at elevators. We're really good at servicing elevators. We service over 200,000 elevators in the United States. Some of them are manufactured by thyssenkrupp. Most are manufactured by others. So we have expertise with third-party equipment too that's manufactured by our competitor. So right now we're really looking at, as a business, what we need to be thinking about when people return to work in a post-COVID-19 space, because again, people don't like to touch anything icky. So I've kind of been on a special project assignment trying to figure out what it is what our response is gonna be to that customer demand.
No, that's great. And just a brief bit about thyssenkrupp. A lot of people may not be familiar with the broader company.
Yeah, that's the first question that you asked me. Yeah, so
I asked a few, so sorry about that.
We're headquartered in Germany. We're a German company. You're actually pronouncing it pretty spot on. We're actually going through being sold right now. So it used to be thyssenkrupp Industrial Solutions, thyssenkrupp Steel. Now ThyssenKrupp Elevator business is going to be sold off, still headquartered in Germany, but we have kind of a consortium of holders right now that are our new owners. But they really like innovation. They really like elevator. The business is strong. They like what we have an expertise in. So we're not looking at changing really our model. It's just doing what we do, but doing it better. And I think that'll lend itself to some pretty cool kind of innovations, and maybe we can move a little bit faster now as we have a little bit more independence.
That's great. No, it's a fascinating company, and its history is fascinating, as is Gore's, right? I think two families also, situation. And privately started. Yeah. So, so Linda, let's jump back into you here with this question. And I'll ask the same of Alison. Just share with us a little bit about, how things have changed for you and managing your team sort of within the crisis here. And maybe the related question there, which is most relevant, is what might change permanently in regards to, how, your operations have changed a little bit, your management has changed a little bit. Anything that seems like it might permanently change along those lines.
Sure. So as we look at what has changed for us, for our team specifically, obviously we're all remote. I think one of the biggest changes for us is the interaction. How do we connect in with startups? How do we I'd be able to work exploring synthetic biology. I could go to an event and meet 100 people in the span of 2 days. And now it's much more about leveraging connections, making connections virtually, and reaching out to people that way. Gore is a deep technology company. We are based on advanced materials. So understanding how we can create and build in labs and how we can do that safely moving forward, this is certainly something that Gore is looking at across the board in all of our worldwide locations. We've looked at also how we can redirect our growth efforts to focus on some of the challenges that are coming out. I say opportunities and challenges coming out from COVID. So we have efforts going on for PPE, for N95 masks. Our filtration material could be very well suited for that. So there's a number of different refocusing of what our efforts are, but really staying true to who we are. We are a company that has innovation and brand promise that is inherent to who we are as innovation. So staying with that trend and seeing what the new opportunities are for us.
And these new areas of focus for you, I'm actually going to kind of throw a question in that I see coming in here that's related to what you're talking about in regards to COVID. And Jackie Leo asks, so that she read about a company in Finland that has created an antiviral fabric. So I'm wondering if these are the types of things that you guys are starting to think about from an innovation standpoint.
Sure. So where we have focused our efforts to date, so we have created a task force specifically around this, around how we can help globally in terms of the need for PPE. So some of the membranes we use in our industrial products division are well suited around filtration and N95 materials, so we're using that. We're looking at, in our fabrics division, the actual Gore-Tex brand name. That while it's waterproof, windproof, breathable, it's not necessarily something you're going to breathe through in a mask form.
Right.
But looking at how we need to adapt and how we need to change. We have some efforts around in gowns, in a respirator. So there's a number of things we're doing. Specifically to the question on antiviral fabric, I don't know a specific answer to that, but we're absolutely exploring the space and how things are going to change.
And how has, in terms of, the sort of, okay, we need to focus on this now in a task force, and how is that sort of being set up internally? Is that sort of coming top down and people down at the R&D line are having a direct sort of line up into management? How has that changed in regards to sort of accelerating innovation internally to react to the moment? If you'd like to comment on that.
Sure. No, that's a great question. So I'm not sure how many folks on the call are familiar. So Gore is a very unique culture. We are a 60-year-old privately held company. We were really built on this foundation that, leaders are built on followers, and we inherently all want to achieve good things and contribute and innovate as associates at Gore. So there are a tremendous number of associates in any function or division or group across the board that are really committed to saying, how can I help? How can I help these efforts? So we do have folks that were in commitments that may be more challenging to do from home that are able to explore some of these efforts. But we've had many associates volunteer, being willing to engage, see how they can contribute. We did create a leadership structure and a point person for all these efforts, but being able to take Gore's knowledge from the regulatory perspective because of our medical division, as well as our materials and industrial products, and combine those together is a huge asset, we think, for this pandemic.
And are you being out in the Silicon Valley Innovation Center, are you getting more calls from management and, hey, we need some innovation here and we need the help?
One thing that I've absolutely noticed is we've gotten a tremendous amount of inbound, that folks that know us and know who Gore is and know what the purpose and the mission of the Innovation Center have come in through our channels.
Yeah.
And we've been able to connect them internally with Gore on the folks who are leading these efforts.
That's great. And I'm sure that makes you feel good about all the investment that's gone into the Innovation Center, the people coming right to you, as opposed to having to come top down.
And it absolutely shows the value of the network, which sometimes is one of the intangibles that's hard to prove or consider a metric from an innovation center, is how do you show the value of these intangibles? And I think, having dozens of folks come through us with opportunities to partner is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and log those inbound calls, right? Let them know. Alison, so sort of same question. How have things changed a little bit in immediate response to COVID? And I know you talked about no one wants to touch elevators. There's also sort of a related question from JW Morris here. Thanks, JW. How many people are talking about voice activated elevators? So how have things changed a little bit for you? And then what are you working on, and what's that process there to accelerate innovation?
Yeah, so just on the day-to-day level, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh yeah, I just work from home and everything's fine. I mean, I have a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old. So, I mean, it gets real and it's not easy. And, there's dogs barking, there's kids screaming, there's, I got to get on a call 5 minutes late because, someone's, not my kid, someone's kid's having a meltdown. So, I mean, I think this is really, the human side has really, shown here. And I think a lot of our coworkers, they know what my cat looks like. I mean,
Right.
I think it's connected us a little bit more than it really ever has. Like even, we're connected. We're having to be more intentional about communication. We're opening up our homes to our coworkers, which, has never happened before. We're opening up our families to a lot of our coworkers. Maybe that's commonplace in a lot of areas. In some places it's not. So I think an immediate kind of learning or change has been just that. And it's been very abrupt and it's been very hard for a lot of people, including myself. So I don't want to just say, oh, it's fine, we just changed business focus and just, business as usual. And we just, started off again. No, I mean, this is a change and it's happened really abruptly, but I think some good things have come out of it. So in my introduction, I spoke a little bit about how, thyssenkrupp is responding to maybe this new world of requiring something clean, something maybe more touchless. Admittedly, thyssenkrupp is a little bit behind our competitors in some of these offerings. So we've known that we've been a little bit behind, but this just makes it more pronounced. So, it's like, it's the old adage of innovation. It's like necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, we can't not, right? These projects have kind of like, just been shot up to the top of a priority list for us. So it's kind of a learning thing too for us, like we can't, this has been kind of a surprise, and we're having to get something out to customers because we have to. It's not just because it's nice to have, or, you know, this is the nice little business case. We got to move, and we got to move fast. So it's a little bit different than how we've traditionally worked. I mean, even as lead as the Research and Innovation Center, we just, you know, we operated quicker than our normal our product development friends, but it still wasn't on the pace of a startup. Or, you know, we would always be talking maybe, you know, next month, or in terms of months. We're now talking in terms of days and in weeks. So that's a little bit of a culture change, even for, you know, leading a research and innovation center. You know, we're a big Titanic corporation, and things just, you know, there's a lot of process, there's orders, there's person for that, there's people for that. We're no different. But it's this need has really flexed our systems, and it's made us go fast whether we want to or not. So a lot of learning coming out. I'm enjoying it, but it's just a little bit different way of working, both with your cat running on your keyboard and you know, having to make some changes really fast. It might be uncomfortable, but you just got to make it work.
Do you think this will also sort of, I guess the right word might be, empower you? You know, the company knows that you need to make some shifts and need to get into another gear. Do you also think that this now empowers you to say, we also need to change the way we manage innovation and to ultimately be able to execute on what you want to do? Does that empower you to say, okay, you know, let's look at my organization a little bit, and or this is how I recommend we change the way we drive innovation internally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about risk, and we're a risk averse company, and some of the, you know, to move fast, you got to kind of manage risk and play a little game of whack-a-mole as you go, and be a little bit more open to, you know, oh, we found this new risk that we didn't know about. We didn't take the time. We were moving fast. So I think it's, you know, it's not going to change overnight, but I think the main word that we need to think about here is risk, being more tolerant to it, and being more open to, you know, dodging things as they come. So that's, I think, is a learning that I'll take with me going forward. And, you know, if I ever find myself in the situation again in such a large company, I can say, you know, well, we did it, you know, when we had that high demand from our customers that we needed to turn something out quick. So, you know, hey guys, we can do it again, but we need to manage risk a little bit differently.
And briefly, how might those no-touch elevators work? Is this like voice activated or like app based, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, we're talking about all the above. Probably not going to see voice acted elevators in wide scale release. There's just a lot of detail there that we don't fully understand. Think about the one time it doesn't work, the one time someone has an accent that's difficult, you're wearing masks. We don't know how masks are going to, you know, interfere with any voice activation. So maybe mid to long term, maybe, but in the short term, at least you won't see anything coming out of thyssenkrupp that's voice activated. But we surely have talked about it. And our strategic partner is Microsoft, that does have you know, a lot of options, both face and voice. The technology is probably there. It's just we haven't put enough rigorous study in it to make sure that, you know, it's frustration free for everyone.
Right. I want to get to some quick best practice here for both of you. You know, not even so much thinking about the crisis and even beyond, but Linda, in terms of managing that innovation center, and, you know, what's been that right mix for you in terms of, you know, working with startups and bringing partners in to tour it, and even, you know, sort of before the crisis and even moving forward, what other ways are you know, you measured the ROI for Gore and the innovation center? And what's really worked, say, either around startup engagement or doing competitions and challenges, kind of what we used to call hackathons, and share some of your best practices about managing the Innovation Center.
Sure. So we opened in May of 2017, so about 3 years. We've had a tremendous amount of learning over those 3 years, and have shifted our strategy probably 3 times in that time frame, understanding how we can have the largest impact for Gore. And really one of the take homes is, you know, Gore is in a company that is divisionally driven or business driven. It's very challenging to be a capability that spreads across the board to enable those divisions. So we've really now focused on trying to find areas that we can drive to a mutual point of impact. So one of those we're looking at today is synthetic biology, for example. And we've revamped our metrics as well. And we essentially have 6 metrics. 3 of them are very volume based. So what technology gaps we're filling, what new Areas that we are exploring broadly. AI, machine learning, for example, could fit in that, digital transformation. And then what specific value propositions that we're trying to vet out. And we do all of those in conjunction with a business, a division, a growth engine that is looking for that. Then we have a metric that's really impact-based. So what is the impact of those volume-based metrics, right? Because we could do all the work in the world from volume, but if that's not having an impact to the bottom line and to revenue for Gore in the areas we're interested,
then you're just really drowning in proof of concepts, right? If you're doing that, right?
We also have metrics around how we're using the space. We have events that could be, 100 folk, even happy hours, but get people in, get them aware of who Gore is and how we can make a difference, how we can enable your project, your startup, or academic or other corporate partnerships. So that is one as well. We always try and do those events with a purpose and a path towards an area where we could focus on. And then the last is around using our lab. So the number of prototypes, minimum viable products that we're building in the lab with potential partners. So that's how we look at it.
And how might maybe this is a question more broadly across Gore, I know it's driven by division, so there's maybe some fiefdoms and things like that, but how might what you're doing in the Innovation Center and sort of this external innovation, open innovation, how might that impact the baseline R&D sort of efforts of the company moving forward? I mean, do you think you'll have more influence and impact and they'll look to you more, not only for the technologies themselves, but just the way that you're managing sort of an R&D process?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. When we have looked at how we fit in, I think one of our challenges early on is that the Innovation Center did not cleanly fit into Gore's innovation and R&D processes. And that made it a challenging spot to be in because we were trying to bring ourselves in and, just based on the way things were set up, it's, we got this, we're doing this, what are you jokers out in California going to do to help us out?
Right.
So now that we've more formalized and structured very simply, this is what we can do. We are bringing in the external ecosystem. This is the value it has. We can find projects we are uniquely suited to help and then accelerate and document how we've accelerated R&D. Right. The other thing is working in projects where we can really own the outcome and show that the outcome is enabling R&D progression or revenue for Gore is where we want to be focusing our time.
And briefly, just before I go to Alison with the same question, in terms, you talked about a lot of the metrics, but if you've had to go back and try to get more budget for the Innovation Center or staff, is there one thing that you could say that has really worked in terms of the people that you go back to and ask for more budget and more support that has really tipped the scales? I know you probably throw a lot of different success metrics at them, but is there one that just seems to get, okay, like, you've got that budget approved or we're in your corner even more here?
It's really about being able to accelerate learnings that we are uniquely positioned to do and drive the company closer to products to scale up to H2, H1. If we can, concretely show how we're able to do that and how we're able to progress, that can only help us.
That's great. Alison, sort of similar question. How's your R&D, sort of structure set up? I noticed your title is Head of Research and Innovation. So, how's that set up? And then, where is open innovation, external sort of innovation, best practices sort of fitting into that for you? Maybe, prior to where we were, but then moving forward, how might that change, if at all?
So what's interesting, I talked at the beginning about how I'm experiencing a role change now. And what that means is that the Innovation Center is going to be brought actually back into the core business. So I can speak to, I believe, why that's happening with thyssenkrupp and what I think the benefit's going to be there, but it's very unique, I think, to our business and what we do. So let me speak to that in a little bit, but I still think the open innovation piece is still important regardless of whether the innovation separate is physically and, mentally separate, or if it's specifically sitting inside the business alongside the traditional development team. So before, I was leading an innovation center that existed, I think that it was built in it started in about 2013. It sat on Georgia Tech campus and had a very, very solid relationship with Georgia Tech. We have a thyssenkrupp elevator has a master research agreement with Georgia Tech. I'll speak more about that in a second. That relates to the open innovation piece. But what we had a challenge with, and I know it's a challenge with every corporate innovation center that exists, because I've sat with, Greg King, I don't know if he's on this call, but, and we've talked about it from multiple people. It's that handover. How do you get stuff that is dreamed up, is an innovation center, the proof of concept works, but maybe, one detail, one specific thing kicks it into, oh my gosh, that's not, that's a must-have requirement that was maybe missed, or the people that didn't have the intricate level of elevator knowledge didn't understand. So the product was not a success. So the proof of concept wasn't a success. And there was too much gap between the proof of concept and where it needed to be to actually start in the traditional product development process to actually go to make the business case less risky, or, as low risk as we needed to go to go into the core product development center. So that was a struggle for us. It definitely was. We had a handful of projects and ideas that went into the core business that are actually being industrialized right now. So, it's not like it's not like 100% failure. I don't know what metric you want to put to it. Maybe 70% fail, 30% succeed. Maybe you flip it depending on what your leadership wants. But the unique thing about our business is that we have so much expertise in building and servicing elevators. Believe me, it's more complicated than you could have ever imagined. That small details can kick an idea into a complete success, or, oh my gosh, that's not going to be adopted. No way, too much of a gap. So for that reason, I think it is very exciting that we're going to pull innovation back actually into the core business, so that we have very close connections to that expert that can do a quick analysis and be that, tiny little product owner and say, yes, that's important, or, no, absolutely not. I've been in the business for 40 years. That's not how you do things. We were kind of missing that connection of having that go-to expert person that could help us make those quick decisions and move into a direction that would eventually have a gap be small enough so that the core business could pick it up. And I know for certain that I'm not airing any dirty laundry that is specific to thyssenkrupp Innovation Center. I know that this is a challenge. This handover piece is tricky for every corporate innovation center out there. So how does open innovation work? I wanted to make sure I made that point clear, because I think it's important to think about in the context of corporate innovation. So how does open innovation work? So for us, I spoke about the Georgia Tech Master Research Agreement. That's still incredibly strong. Actually, we're running a project with Georgia Tech right now. A civil engineer is doing some impact analysis for our test facility that's being built in Atlanta. So we're kind of living it, breathing it, today. And another piece about that open innovation part, I'm reading the questions, kind of what was one of the questions of the panel, how you picked what kind of partners you wanted to approach when it came to these COVID solutions. That was kind of an easy one. And Drew, you and I talked about this is, we had to look inside and say, okay, we know elevators, we know how to build them, we know how to service them. I don't know a lick about UV lighting or misting spray or deionizing air for air purification. I don't have a clue. So we reached out to other companies that do those things better than we do. And that doesn't just go for the COVID solutions. That goes with anything that if you look inside, you look left, you look right, and everyone says, I don't know. And that's not something that you really want to build in-house expertise for. It's not worth it. It's not where it's not where the ship is headed. Then it's a kind of a no-brainer to look to an academic partner or look to a technology partner. I mean, of course, we have to make sure that we're, got the right NDAs in place and everything.
Right.
Everything like that. We do that the right way. We don't just, open it up and talk freely. But that kind of makes the decision easy for us to make. If you can't do it, you look left, you look right. No one can. You don't want to build it. just start Googling, start making cold calls, networking, like Linda was saying, those, do you know a guy? I used to work with, this, she's over here now, give her a call, see what she can help us with. So I think those personal connections are incredibly important. They don't have to be formal, formal master research agreement type things. It really can be who knows who.
And it is really a great dynamic ecosystem. Obviously, we all know about the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and the academia there and just the broader ecosystem. But Atlanta, it's, we did a show in Atlanta. I've been following Atlanta for quite a while. It's quite a remarkable ecosystem. All of the innovation centers that are there, 40 or 50, I think at least now, several dozen in partnership specifically with Georgia Tech, right? And Georgia Tech and Emory and Georgia State. And there's a great an amazing ecosystem in Atlanta. So if anyone's looking at ecosystems outside of Silicon Valley, Atlanta, we would definitely recommend.
Yes,
I'd like to go to David Kirkpatrick here, who's the founder, editor-in-chief of Techonomy, and CDX, as many of you know, is part of Techonomy. So David, I know you have a question.
Thanks, Drew. And it's great conversation, really great. The two really interesting companies, so thank you both. I wanted to ask a question about corporate culture. And you both talk about that in the sense of how you're trying to integrate your work with the entire organization and the challenges that represents. And, it's a classic problem. But one of the things that I've been interested in forever, and I'm especially thinking about, having just read a book about Amazon, which I know Drew has also just read, one of the things about Amazon that is really distinctive and that has allowed them to be so powerful and diverse in their innovation efforts is a culture of honesty about what really works and what doesn't work. And they have, even what they call a no sycophants rule. And I thought, would just be curious to hear you both talk about what is the attitude, either in your company, if you're comfortable talking about that, or the attitude that you think is generally needed in business in order for managements to receive innovation ideas that aren't always what they expected to hear.
Good question, David, and either of you jump right in.
I'll go here and make sure I answer the question. So, as I mentioned, Gore is a very unique culture. We have a lattice organization, so there's not your standard hierarchy that you'd find. Any associate at Gore is encouraged to speak to any other associate to continue on the research they're doing. They're encouraged to explore their ideas and see what opportunities could come from those ideas. So I think there's very much an attitude, and an attitude that we really try and encourage is, go after what you see as an opportunity. We have something we informally refer to as the passionate champion. If you're the passionate champion to keep taking a new pursuit or an area and move it forward and explore it, then do it. Take your time. Make sure you complete your commitments and what you've signed up to do, but explore new opportunities and see where they can take you. And that's very pervasive in who we are as a company. And what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that is a tactic that the curiosity, like sheer curiosity of anyone from engineers to sales folks to manufacturing on how we can solve problems and what other problems Gore can go after.
But just specifically, does management have an attitude that if it isn't what they expected and it isn't even what they wanted to hear, they're willing to hear it? That doesn't exist often enough in companies that are trying to innovate. That's why I'm asking.
Sure. So, I mean, there's probably not there. Well, I would say there's not a yes or no answer to that. I would say I'm going to give you, for the most part, yes. Right. And I think there are 100% folks in Gore where the answer to that question is yes. I do. I like when I'm working with my team and folks have ideas around the Innovation Center on why this startup could be awesome. Let's hear it. So you have to listen to it. So yeah, in general, the answer would be yes for Gore. People are really responsive. It's understanding how. I think the easy part for me is listening to what the opportunity is. The potentially bigger challenge is then how do you take a 60-year-old conservative company and execute on what that opportunity could be?
Yeah, I agree with that last part that you just said. And maybe at thyssenkrupp, we don't have quite the culture that Gore does. But I would say if the idea or the opportunity is presented in a way that is in the focus area that currently exists in the company, that is welcome. If it's something that's like, hey, senior leader, I have an idea for, a completely new business model, I think some of the leaders in our head might not be so receptive to that because they are so focused on executing in this direction that the ship is heading. So if you can jump on my ship and make it go faster, then excellent. I love this. But if you're trying to steer this Titanic over here, we don't really have an avenue for those kinds of ideas to be welcome and fostered and grow. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but to be honest with you, I believe that that's how things kind of work at thyssenkrupp.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, David. Good question. So JW Morris had a question here, and I'm going to broaden it a bit. The question was to Alison, and Alison asking if your Asia R&D operation sort of operates differently or is in sync. But I want to expand that question a little bit, and just for both of you, and Alison, maybe we'll start with you. What are your sort of international R&D efforts? Do you have offices? But I guess what I'm also really interested in knowing in this sort of new world order where we're all used to remote and patching in to people all over the world, is there an opportunity now to, whether it's looking for startups, technology scouting, to explore more internationally, right? I mean, we all get very myopic, and obviously, Linda, you're in Silicon Valley, which is amazing, and Alison, you're in Atlanta, which is amazing in terms of their ecosystems. But so sort of two-parter for both of you. Where are your international R&D efforts, if you have them, and how do you sync with them? But what about sourcing in regards to international startups and partnering moving forward?
I'll go that first. So the specific question is TK R&D Asia operating differently or in sync with the Americas. We are under a transformation right now to make things a lot more friendly and a lot more conducive to global collaboration. That is not such an easy thing to do, especially with the product development being, I didn't talk about this at the beginning. I've been focused on elevator, but elevator, we do elevator, escalator, moving, walks, passenger boarding bridges. So different areas of the globe are experts in different products. In the US, we're pretty much elevator developed focused. In Spain, that's where a lot of our escalator development occurs. And it's very unique to each market. So like if you ride an elevator in Europe, they're typically a lot smaller. So their product offering looks a little bit different. Same story for all different markets, for different consumer goods, industrial equipment, et cetera. So in terms of being in sync with Asia, I would say there's opportunity to be even more in sync. I don't know what the question is specifically. Someone might be Googling like thyssenkrupp COVID clean solutions in Asia. I think that's maybe where that's coming from. And they are actually advertising this like perfect suite of solutions. But that might be maybe a cultural difference between how our Asia group operates and how the US operates. In the US, we wouldn't advertise anything that we can't yet take orders for, but our Asian business unit operates a little bit differently. They have some ideas for products that look to be for sale, but they're still actually being tested. So maybe that's where that question's coming from. Someone's Googling on their other screen. But in terms of answering your more global question, we are in the process of aligning more kind of competency focused and having that specific area be focused in that competency, and then that kind of spread out to the rest of the globe. That's a huge, massive undertaking of transformation, and I think a lot of companies are trying to do that. So we're in the midst of it. It's in process. But right now it's kind of more of a relationship of kind of who knows who. Like I met this guy at a conference and he's in Asia and he was telling me about this. Let me call him up. It's not necessarily, he's not the owner of this item. It's just because I met him at a conference and I need help. So I won't, since we're wrapping up on time, I won't be able to really, I won't answer the startup question because one, we're not good at engaging with startups, just to be honest with you. Even in my innovation center, I had a couple conversations with some startups, but I don't have good experience probably like Linda does in order to speak to proper engagement with startups, both locally and globally.
Great. Thanks, Allison. Linda?
Sure. So Gore is a global company. We have offices where we do manufacturing and R&D in the US, Europe, APAC, sales offices worldwide. So we very much, we have obviously sales worldwide, different requirements by country, but very much are integrated from an innovation perspective with our global sites. From a startup perspective, one of the things that we like to say here is that, you know, we've had the question, okay, you created the Silicon Valley Innovation Center. Does that mean you are just looking at startups within the 50-ish square miles of Silicon Valley? And the way we like to answer that is that there is so much money and connections and knowledge and startups that flow through Silicon Valley. We really focus on flow through, that enables us to connect in to folks in Asia Pacific, in Europe. So as we're exploring the sustainability trip, last year we did a trip to the UK, and we were able to set up a week's worth of meetings by leveraging our Silicon Valley connections. And now we have a connection point. So it's really this network. And then we look at these startups worldwide, because in sustainability, the requirements are very different in the EU, UK, the production in China, you know, and then the progressiveness of California versus other parts of the United States. So we're absolutely looking globally on all fronts.
And in terms of the startups, Linda, that you engage with, how are you, not sourcing like a venture capitalist, but just in terms of where are you finding them? Because obviously in Silicon Valley, you know, you could bump into them wherever you are. And I'm sure there's inbound into you, but how are you sourcing the best startups? What's the process that allows you to find the most relevant, qualified startups where, you know, execution happens more often than not, maybe?
You know, I don't have I think it's impossible. Well, maybe I should never say impossible, but we don't have a spreadsheet of how exactly we can do that. I think so much of that is our team's experience that we've developed over the past years. And it's very much connecting, understanding what our internal teams need. What TRL level does a startup need to be at to be viable? How important is this gap that needs to be filled versus others? How willing is the startup to change direction? They might be absolutely unwilling to, they have a focus, understandably, and they're driving towards that path. So there's a number of criteria. I mean, we're finding these folks through our venture network. So we have a number of VCs that we connect in with. We work with Silicon Valley Bank, who's been fantastic. So, you know, working specifically with folks that know us as a company is a very helpful way to find vetted startups as well.
That's great. Before I let both of you go, Kieran from Kite has a quick question, and we'll wrap it up. Who are your role models for innovation, whether it's in manufacturing or not, any other company? But do either of you have role models as far as sort of great, I suppose it could be companies as well, but if it's someone specific, that's even more helpful. And either of you can answer whenever you're ready.
I'll go. I don't have a leader that comes to mind. I'm not going to rattle off names of CEOs of companies. What I get most excited about in terms of innovation is, like, you know, that 55, 60-year-old elevator mechanic that I'm in a machine room with. You know, he's an expert in his trade, and no one can really figure out why, you know, his elevators that he's responsible for are maintained so well. And he tells me, you know, one little teeny practice or, you know, an insight from him that he has gained and that he has modified his behavior for, or like tapped into, that helps him be better than everybody else. And he doesn't have his name written in lights. He's not making, you know, $300,000 a year, but he's an expert in his craft, and he's really playing off of that one little insight that really escalates his performance over everybody else. You know, those kinds of people, those kinds of situations is what really gets me really lit up and really jazzed. You don't have to build this huge company. You just have to do something really small, but do something really well. And I think that is, those seeds really get me fired up. I love to see stuff like that.
That's great. I like that answer. And Linda will give you the last word.
Oh, all right. So I'm gonna actually use Gore, and Kieran and Mark might call me on it for cheating by using my own company. But I think looking back, Bill and Vive Gore founded this company over 60 years ago because they saw this huge opportunity with a fluoropolymer PTFE, and their passion and desire to achieve something. They did this in the basement of their garage. They had 5 kids at the time, and they've created a company out of a dream and a passion and like not letting go of what they saw as an opportunity. And I think that still resonates with our company. It resonates with where we are today and finding new opportunities. So I think it inspires me to keep going.
That's great. So for everyone online, David, Kirkpatrick, and I are going to do a quick wrap up right after this. Linda and Alison, thanks so much. I see lots of scrolling things here in the chat. Great conversation. Definitely very open and forthright. And we really appreciate your time. And we look forward to bringing CDX to your actual locations, hopefully, if not this year, next year. So hang in there, and thanks again.
Thank you. It's been a blast. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
Yeah, David, why don't we just jump to a wrap up here? They're obviously both great. They've been great at every time they've been at our shows. We could have gone another hour. I got to maybe a third of the questions here, but what's top of mind for you as listening to that discussion?
Well, just the seriousness with which both companies have taken this whole project of innovating internally and thinking hard about what makes it work. And really, they're two enormously impressive organizations. I mean, Gore is legendary. thyssenkrupp Elevator, I've learned about partly through your conferences. I love, by the way, this test facility that's going to be a landmark in the region in Atlanta. That's a brilliant branding, as well as probably product development and refinement strategy. I just love that. So I just think they're two extremely resourceful organizations. And the resourcefulness that came throughout the discussion really impressed me.
I'm going to ask you something here that you may just want to noodle on, and I'll stretch out the question because it's just sort of came to me on the fly. I was on the call yesterday with the Beesonomics author, and you guys, and because CDX focuses a little bit more on legacy companies, but a lot more of the interesting startups flow through the techonomy universe. As we've been having these discussions, David, what's top of mind, or what comes to the top of your head in regards to the approach to innovation, particularly now that we're in this sort of reset, and the history of innovation at these startups, right, versus legacy companies. And I'm wondering if the crisis is going to sort of narrow, that gap a little bit. And obviously the nimble startups are always going to be more nimble and be able to innovate faster and have flatter hierarchies. And we get all that, but any thoughts on where we go from here, particularly on that gap between legacy companies and innovation and more startup oriented companies, even if you consider Amazon a graduated startup, which we might?
Well, it's funny, the question I asked to the two panelists is reflective of some of my current thinking on that. Having just read the book Beesonomics, and also reading the book whose author we featured at Techonomy recently, Always Day One, Alex Kantrowitz, who wrote about Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Microsoft and their cultures and what makes them different. He really was setting out to answer that exact question. I mean, he talks about the engineer's mindset in Alex's book, and that, the fact that most of those companies, actually all of them, are led by engineers, is a significant factor in how those engineers do lead. But I also think, if you take away from the Beesonomics book, which I recommend to everyone, by the way, by Brian Dumaine, it just was published yesterday. This idea of AI and machine learning is increasingly occupying the center of strategy at Amazon. And if you take away what is Brian's, the single biggest messages his book probably send to other companies, and he wrote it in part to help other companies figure out how to deal with the approach of this colossus, which is approaching every industry.
Right.
One is this culture of openness to innovative ideas and truth-telling as a critical corporate characteristic, right? That's one. But the other is thinking about AI as something that is increasingly going to be interspersed and intertwined with literally everything the company does, which will then accelerate the so-called flywheel at Amazon or whatever flywheel any company is able to create. And I worry, frankly, that there are really still very, very few so-called established companies that understand the power of data analytics and AI applied on top of that to advance their cause in whatever possible way, whether it's customer service or product innovation or management, even employee sentiment analysis. And there's so many ways that Amazon is increasingly going to be lapping everybody else.
Right.
And Amazon is going to come at every single company, including possibly even the two companies just on this meeting. So it's not irrelevant.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had a whole AI machine learning segment, a question at least that we could have gone 20 minutes on that we didn't even get to, but it's definitely part.